Hey everyone. So, just getting down to brass tacks, when I saw the spoilers for this chapter, I flat out hated it. And now that I have read it in full with context, it's complicated. I understand a little of what Mashima was trying to do here, but I still don't think it worked entirely. Now, I will say, for as much as Shiki appealing to Joe in the way he does reeks of friendship power, I do kind of like how it does feel uniquely a little bit underhanded for Shiki to use the knowledge of Drakken's past to convince him. Like just something about that. Even though there's good intentions in order for Shiki to bring it up, it does feel weirdly underhanded in order for him to use Drakken Joe's own childhood as a means to try to convince him. Like, there's something uniquely underhanded about it, and I do kind of like it. But even saying all that, everything with Drakken in this chapter just felt really out of place, out of character. And look, I'm trying to take into account that this is a different world, so even the antagonists we've come to know are going to be different from how we know them. But that's just the problem. We do know Drakken Joe, and while it isn't so much a problem of seeing him getting emotionally phased or emotionally vulnerable by being reminded of his past, I do see as a bit more of an issue that he got so easily swayed by it, and even more so, honestly, even more so than just him being swayed by Shiki's words. Even more so, it was absolutely jarring seeing him act like a goofball after the fact. Like, just seeing him just have these comedic arguments with Shiki and with Nero. It just it felt so, I don't know, maybe it's just because we didn't get to know the later side of the guy, but just seeing him just act so goofy and wacky just did not work for me. I don't know what it is, but it just doesn't. After everything we've seen with Drakken Joe, just seeing him act that way just did not work for me. And to answer the question I'm probably gonna get of why I was so lenient on the Nero situation but not Drakken, it's honestly because with Nero, he was largely a blank slate. We did get some surface level details about him, but not enough for him to have a definitive character personality, at least in my mind. Joe is kind of the opposite. He might not have gotten a lot of terms of his history, but he has a much more defined character and personality, and that just, I don't know, it didn't feel like it worked, at least not in the intended way. Okay, now, now with that said, the only thing about this that does kind of work for me is the switch we see that this version of Joe doesn't actually drain the life force from people to maintain his youth. He drains the life force from animals, which is a nice workaround of explaining why Weiss's mother's alive, while also confirming Shiki's assumptions about this world's Drakken. And despite being despite how I'm sounding and how I was a little iffy on how the pacing of the conversation itself played out, I do like how Drakken isn't fully convinced until the news of the chronophage gets brought up, and we do see that much more benevolent side. And on that note, one thing I do like as well is how Drakken does have a very genuine reason for doing what he's doing, which is, he says, controlling the forces of light and darkness. He's the one keeping the worst of the criminal underworld in check, which is a nice bit of insight into Joe's philosophy. That just the fact of him being a criminal overlord is what's keeping a lot of the darker elements kind of in check. For however much of an evil bastard he's been, there is unfortunately reason behind it, which is to keep a lot of the more evil elements from usurping people who are more evil than him. Now, with all that said, I do want to talk about how I could have made this flow better, because I do like the core of what's here. I think the core of what's here is fine. It just needs stronger reinforcement. And one thing I would have done differently personally is, while still taking into account Drakken Joe becoming his more benevolent person, is one thing I would have done is, rather than have Shiki immediately jump into the battle with Nero, I would have personally had it to where I would personally had him confronted, but by Joe's subordinates first, as a means to not only confirm Shiki's suspicions about Joe, but as a means to also convince them to help him. Then when the fight with Nero does happen, largely keep it the same, but now with Shiki having the support of Mina, Diego, and Seth, have them play a more active role in convincing Joe to work with Shiki. Again, what I'm saying, it probably sounds very like it sounds even more like friendship power, but the thing is, I think what I just laid out would have worked better, because in a situation like that, I think Joe would have been. It would have made Joe just feel a little bit more in character, just from the fact that he'd be more willing to listen to his subordinates rather than just outright even pay attention to what Shiki's saying. That's kind of my view on it. I don't know. Again, I know it might still seem a little bit within that friendship power thing, but I think it still would have worked better, honestly, in my opinion. With all that being said, after the whole Drakken Joe business, we cut back to the entire crew reuniting with Homura in tow, and yeah, on top of her still being completely and totally traumatized, we get confirmation that, yeah, Valkyrie is still dead in this world and has been for 5 years. But the way it's worded makes it sound like this version of Homura is the one who killed her. And because our Homura inhabited this Homura's body, she's gotten an entire feedback loop of memories that have left her traumatized by whatever it is that caused Valkyrie's death. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Mashima's resolution is going to be for this one, because I can only assume that it does involve Ivory in some way. And honestly, with how broken Homura is right now, it feels like Ivory is kind of the only one capable of bringing her out of her trauma, like, and of saving her, and just for Homer as well, to overcome the source of this trauma itself. Because from where I'm standing, there's not really anything Shiki and others can even do that others can really do. Like, it just feels like this is something Homura has to do itself. On a lighter note, though, I'm not gonna lie, even though it's played up a bit for comedy, I do like the idea of Witch's uncovered face being the thing that jogged Hermit's memory. Like, it's a weird thing, but it does kind of make a little bit of sense, and just kind of reinforces the idea that they are like sisters, they are siblings, kind of thing. And I really missed the playful jab she and Weiss also like lob at each other in this chapter. It's really nice. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.